Hello lovely people, I recently posted a haul video, but today I'm doing an unhaul.
So
I tend to unhaul books fairly regularly. When I have finished a book and I've wrapped it up, it only really goes on the shelves if I really liked it, if I see myself wanting to reread it. If it's a book that I want to keep, then I keep it. But a lot of the time I give away books, I sell them, just because I have a very limited shelf space. I've been doing a bit of a reorganisation of the shelves, and I've unearthed a bunch of books that I think I kind of forgot I had, or rather like a while ago they were books that I thought I would like reread and really like, but now I'm like just doing a bit of a refresh. So I thought I would run through them today, just because I don't normally have so many to talk about in one go. I'm going to start with books that I potentially want your opinions on, and then I'll just move into ones that I definitely know that I'm pretty much just going to get rid of. So, the first one of these is one that I'm a little bit conflicted on, and that's La Belle Sauvage, the first of the Book of Dust by Philip Pullman. So, I really love his Dark Materials, I loved it as a child, I still love it as an adult, and I was really excited when this new trilogy was announced, because I was like, yes, let's revisit the world, wonderful. I didn't dislike this book, I just gave it like a 3 out of 5 stars, and the more time has passed, the more I'm like, not a lot really happened. It's not made me want to pick up the second book, and I've also heard some mixed things about the second book. Some plot details that I've heard about also kind of make me not want to read the second book. I have a feeling that my entire feeling about this series will hinge upon whether the third book is very good, but then I also think to myself, do I want to read and keep 2 books in the hope that the third book will be good and make them worth it, or do I just want to accept that maybe this new series is not for me? What I would love to hear is, if you have read both the first and second books, do you think I would like the second book? Is it worth reading? It is available on Libby, so I could read it on Libby. All that's to say is that I don't know if I need to keep this book. The pro comment of keeping it is I do really love the naked hardback. But is that a good enough reason to keep such a chunky little book on my shelves when I have such limited shelf space? I don't think it is. So this is one that I'm not sure if I'm going to get rid of yet or not, but I would love to hear your thoughts on whether or not I should. The next 5 are books that I haven't actually read, so also if you have read these and you think that I would like them, please do let me know, because that might influence me to keep them. First up is Atonement by Ian McEwan. Technically I have read part of this. I never finished it. I always meant to. I don't know if Ian McEwan is really for me. I had to study Enduring Love when I was at school, and I found it very boring. This had some lovely moments of description in, but I don't know if that's enough to make me want to read the whole book. I have a bit of a block about this book, and I've been meaning to like finish it for probably like 10 years, and I never have, and I feel like that's maybe a sign that I should just let it go. After that is Charlotte Gray by Sebastian Faulks. I also studied birdsong when I was at school in my year of World War I literature, and I did really enjoy studying birdsong. I had like a lot to say about it. I've never reread it since, but I do still have my copy because it's heavily annotated, so I'm a little bit like emotionally attached to it. I picked up this one a year or so after I'd studied it, because I thought, let's try another Sebastian Faulks. Whereas birdsong is focused on World War I, this one's focused on World War II, and it's following this woman who's like heading to occupied France on a mission. I think one thing is that I just feel like over my life I have read quite a lot of Second World War books by now. It's sort of one of those settings that I'm a lot fussier about which books I now pick up, just because I have read quite a few by this point. Also, I think sometimes books that you really enjoy studying don't always end up as like writers that you really enjoy to just read for pleasure. I don't know, something put me off this, but if you've read this and loved this, I would be willing to reconsider. Keep that for every single one. Another one that I haven't read is Shadow Web by NM Browne. Again, I gave this one like the first couple of chapters and I wasn't feeling it, so I put it down with the idea of DNFing it and getting rid of it. All I really know is that there's this girl called Jess, and she ends up in an alternate version of her world, and she can't let anyone know that she's an imposter. And so then she ends up like playing the most dangerous game of her life. Again, I did try a couple of chapters and I wasn't feeling this, but if you tell me that it's amazing, I'll probably give it another go. One I'm pretty confident I'm going to get rid of is Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood by Rebecca Wells. This is one of those that was on my radar because it's on the Rory Gilmore reading challenge, and at one point I was attempting to do that, and then I've sort of reached the point where I kind of feel like there's a lot of books on that challenge that I just don't want to read, so I've just walked away from it. This is like set in the south of America, sort of following these like southern belles and like the complicated relationships between these group of friends who are all mothers and their daughters. So I was interested in this because of this idea of like mother-daughter relationships, this like group of friends who became friends during they were disqualified from the Shirley Temple lookalike contest for unladylike behaviour in 1932. I thought it sounded fun, but I looked at some reviews and a lot of people were saying that it's not actually that nice. There's like some really horrible things that happen in it. So again, like I'm not sure that I really want to spend the time on it. Another one that I tried out but wasn't really feeling was Wish I Was Here by Jackie Kay. Jackie Kay is an author that I'm interested in. I did read Trumpet. This is a selection of short stories. I tried out about 3 or 4 short stories, but none of them were really grabbing me, and I do have this thing with short story collections where I can be very picky on it, so this one I also have just decided to sort of like put to one side. I've been doing some rereading lately as part of this reorganising of my shelves. I identified a bunch of books that I felt like I wanted to give another go to decide if they're going to stay. I have a bunch of those still that I need to do a reread of, but a couple of them I have reread and I have decided to get rid of. A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. I read this for the Asian Readathon this year, so if you want like my full thoughts on it, I'll leave a link to that video down below. Essentially, I understand why it emotionally affected me the first time around. I didn't really get that the second time around because I didn't feel quite so immersed in like the characters, so I just thought, pass this one on, someone else is gonna love it. Similarly, Art and Lies by Jeanette Winterson. I've essentially been reassessing my love of Jeanette Winterson. She was one of my favourite authors when I was like 17, and I do still really love books like Orange Is Not the Only Fruit will always be one of my favourite books. It means so much to me. A lot of the rereads I've been doing of her have just sort of been highlighting that I think that she has very beautiful ways of writing, but I sometimes just don't really connect to what she's saying. This is one of those. So Art and Lies follows 3 different perspectives, Picasso, Handel and Sappho, who all meet on this train. And there are moments in this that have some beautiful like phrases that I remember the phrases that I loved from this book, but again I did dip in and try and do a reread and I just wasn't really feeling the narrative. I felt a bit disconnected, so I'm going to let that one go. I've also let Sexing the Cherry go, but I think I'm going to keep The Passion because I did like that one more than these two. Another one that I also loved when I was 17 that I'm just going to let go is The World's Wife by Carol Ann Duffy. This is poems from the perspective of like wives of like famous people, whether that's from mythology, from religion, from history. Some of these really work well for me. A lot of them I just felt a bit okay about. I understand why I loved this when I was 17 because it was one of my first introductions to this concept of like writing back against canon and that kind of thing. I think it's a bit like cynical for me now, I think. Some books that I'm getting rid of because I reread them and I didn't like them is most of the Narnia series, but not all. I'm keeping The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. I do think it's a very classic children's fantasy. I had a really lovely time rereading it. I'm also keeping The Magician's Nephew. It was one of my favourites when I was a kid, and I reread it and I still quite liked it. But I am going to get rid of the rest of them. So Prince Caspian. Oh, I've not got these in the right order. Prince Caspian, Voyage of the Dawn Treader, The Silver Chair, The Horse and His Boy, and The Last Battle. Most of these I just found a bit boring. I really like C.S. Lewis's imagery. You're going to get a bunch of book chats from me where I talk about these books individually, where my main point is he has some gorgeous imagery and concepts. I don't like the way he executes them. Some of them, like The Last Battle, I just thought that this was shit and offensive. Others, like The Silver Chair and Voyage of the Dawn Treader, it's just reading them again as an adult, I just got a bit bored and I don't think the characters are that complex and it just doesn't really interest me that much. So most of these I'm going to give away because they're really nice additions and I think like someone else could like them. Some books that I just genuinely like but just don't think I'm going to reread, so I'm just making a bit of space. This includes Honourable Friends by Caroline Lucas. This is Caroline Lucas's account of like her time being the only Green MP in Westminster. It was really interesting. I found it a genuinely interesting look at how Westminster functions and the pros and cons of being such an independent political party in that world, like the alliances you can make, but then also like the lack of support you get and stuff like this. It's just, I don't see myself rereading this book. I feel like I've got everything out of it that I would, and so I think someone else could read this and have a really great time with it. Hazel by Julie Hearn and Rowan the Strange by Julie Hearn. These are books 2 and 3 in a series. I'm keeping book 1, which is called Ivy, because it was one of my favourite books when I was a kid. It follows this girl in Victorian London who ends up being a model for a pre-Raphaelite painter. I loved it. I love the pre-Raphaelites. I've always loved them since I was a child because they have some good gingers. These are the sequels. Each one kind of has like a historical moment and a topic that they're exploring. So this one focuses on the suffragettes movement, and then this one focuses on experiences within mental institutions during a particular time. I don't dislike either of these. This is very much an author that I loved when I was a child. I don't necessarily see myself rereading these ones, so I think I'm going to give these ones away, but I think I am going to keep Ivy out of nostalgia purposes. These are the selected poems of Robert Browning, edited by James Reeve. Robert Browning is a poet that I wanted to explore after having read John Connolly, The Book of Lost Things, because his Childe Roland poem features really heavily in that book. I really liked that poem. I appreciated getting an understanding of him as a poet better. There were like 2 or 3 poems in here that I really liked, but I don't think that's enough for me to keep the whole collection. Ammonites and Leaping Fish, A Life in Time by Penelope Lively. This is Penelope Lively's memoir. Penelope Lively is an author. I've never read any of her other books. I did still enjoy reading this one. I didn't feel like I needed to have read her other books in order to read this. What I was interested in about this is because she's writing this about 80-something, and I was really interested in this look at old age, because I think we don't really get that many perspectives from like aging women, and I would like to increase the amount of books that I read about being an older woman, because I hope to one day be an older woman, and I would like to have like a sense of that, an idea of that, a valuing of that. It's just, this is another one that I don't think I'm ever going to reread. I think I've got out of this what I would have got out of it, and I would like to more look at getting new books that also explore that topic rather than returning to this one. Nothing Ever Happens Here by Sarah Hagger-Holt is a middle grade book. When Izzy's parent comes out as a trans woman, she feels like it puts a spotlight on the family. I read this in June for Pride Month, so again I will leave my link to that wrap up below because I talk about it in a lot more detail. On the whole, this is a lovely book. I think it is geared towards a cisgender readership rather than a transgender readership, although I did see a lot of reviews from transgender people saying that they really loved this and would have loved to have it as a kid. It's just also, I think, a lot of the stuff with like the frequency of like dead naming and the amount of transphobia and stuff in this might not make it a very enjoyable read for a lot of trans readers. I don't think it's bad, it's just I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I don't think I'm going to reread it, so I think someone else could get a lot more out of this. The next 2 I have to personally apologise to my friends for. First of all, sorry Matt, I know you love this book. But I'm getting rid of Death in Spring by Merce Rodoreda. I was very interested in reading this because it is a Catalonian book, and I've never read anything from Catalan before. I thought that this did some really gorgeous descriptions and this contrasting of this like stifling society and the unsettlingness as you realise the weird rituals in this society, contrasted with this like sumptuous description of nature that then becomes more and more distorted. Number 1, it's very stream of consciousness. We all know I'm not very good with stream of consciousness things, so I really struggled to read it a bit. Number 2, I didn't love the way that like disfigurement is used in this as like symbolising the wrongness at the heart of this society. I felt like we could have done without that. So on the whole, again, it's just another one that I just don't think I'm ever going to reread. I guess I'm glad to have read it because it was a challenging book, and I like to challenge myself with my reads sometimes. It's just, again, someone else is probably going to love this a lot more than I do. And next I will apologise to Miriam because I know that this is one of your favourite series, but I think I'm going to get rid of A Place Called Perfect by Helena Duggan. This is a KJ Mountford cover, and I love him, and that's why I bought this. My friend Miriam really loves this series. I enjoyed this. It's more that I don't think I feel the need to own this series. We're set in this place called Perfect, where when you move there you get given these rose-tinted glasses, but our main character begins to think that there must be something else going on under the surface. There's some shenanigans afoot. I would be interested in finishing this series at some point. I think it's one that I would be okay to just read from my library. I don't feel the need to own this one. I don't feel like super emotionally connected to it. So I thought, make some space for some middle grades that I'm going to adore. I'm going to get rid of Gender and Antiquity and Its Legacy by Brooke Holmes. This is a remnant of my university days. I did dip back in to see if I wanted to do a reread of it, decided that I didn't really need to, and I'll just give it away, and someone who's probably studying can get this way cheaper than if they bought it new. The final two books I realised I could have included in that first bit where I was like, I don't know whether to get rid of them or not. First up is Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. My dad gave this to me because he's educating me in the ways of comics. This is a very classic graphic novel. It's very influential. I did enjoy reading it. It is quite bleak. It's more that I just don't know if I'm ever going to reread this one. I feel like now I've read it and now I know what it is, I'm probably not going to return to it. And again, this is like a decent copy and edition, and I just feel like I have other people in my life who might want to read that more than me. The final one is High Fidelity by Nick Hornby. I really liked this when I read it because I really like music. I really like lists. And so this thing that you return to throughout this of like, your like Desert Island Discs lists, you know, like top 5 X, top 5 Y. Like I like making compilations. I miss CDs. I used to love making like mixtapes for people and giving them to them, and I know that you can kind of do it with playlists, but like I don't pay for like Spotify or anything like that. I just listen to the music that I own because I'm a little dinosaur girl. And you can't really do that so much anymore. So I miss like making mixtapes for people and like capturing my mood every year. I like have a big playlist that is like, I add the songs to it that I'm really listening to a lot that year. So I have like 27 years worth of like playlists of this is what I listened to when I was 26. This is what I listened to when I was like 17. I say 27 years worth, that's not true. I've only been doing it since I was about like 15. But still, that's like a good 10 years or so. It's just, the aspect of this that I'm not sure about is that essentially the main character has been broken up with, and I think there's going to be an aspect of this on a reread now that I'm older where he's like being a whiny baby and not being so nice to the girl who broke up with him and that kind of thing, and I don't know how that's going to hit me now. I could do a reread, you could say, but I thought about it for a while and I just haven't, so I don't know whether to just give it away and just like, I don't know, this is one that, again, I would accept your thoughts on if you either loved it or hated it. That would influence me. But yeah, that's it. Those are all the books I wanted to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I find it really interesting getting an understanding of why people unhaul books and that kind of thing. So I find that really fun to watch. I hope you did too. Otherwise, I hope you're having a lovely day. We'll see you next time for something